Joining us now from Washington, Nizar Farsakh, a former advisor to the Palestinian leadership, and right here in the studio, Dan Meridor, who held several cabinet posts in Israel over his long political career, including justice and economy minister. Gentlemen, thank you both very much for being here. Dan, let me start with you. Let's try to start with a positive, because when we hear both Israeli and Palestinian analysts reflect on Oslo today, it's very difficult to hear anything positive. Do you think that something positive has been left over? What is the silver lining 25 years on, if there is one?
I think that the understanding that what we have cannot be perpetuated. We need to change. We have an anomaly that cannot go forever. I think this is a given. I think the fact that there needs to be an agreement is understood by most peoples, not necessarily by the leaderships of both sides. Here is the rub, there's the rub, that I think in most polls you see that most Israelis would support a two-state solution. This government does not. On the Palestinian side, I have to say, although I'm quite critical of my government now, there have been attempts, very sincere, by Barak, by Olmert, Peres, Rabin, and none of them succeeded in bringing the conflict to an end. Also had one important thing that failed, the attempt to put an end to the conflict, not to improve, not to change, not temporarily, but put an end, very presumptuous, very hopeful, very promising, but this failed. And this I still don't see now a simple way out, be it for the fact that there is no Palestinian united leadership, and even with those who are, we haven't been able to reach an agreement. On the Israeli side, I must say, there is no real devotion to the idea that we need to divide the land into two. Prime Minister Netanyahu said it several times. Other ministers say the opposite. So we have a situation where objectively it's clear that we are on the wrong track. We need to change and try to find agreements. On the leadership level, this is not the case.
Right. Nizar, from the Palestinian perspective, Oslo failed to bring an independent Palestinian state, but without question, the diplomatic position, the diplomatic recognition of the Palestinians did improve over 25 years. How, looking back now, was it the right move for the Palestinian leadership?
It's a difficult question. I would think there were some positives. Definitely the first one was having the Palestinian political entity and the leadership be in Palestine. That was a big, important step for Palestinians that had been operating from the diaspora for so long. There has been some control over some aspects like education and health and culture, for sure, that many Palestinians were longing for. The challenge was that Palestinians were aspiring for complete sovereignty, right? So what Oslo provided was a bit of improvement in self-determination, but it failed to reach its final goal, which is complete Palestinian sovereignty. So it's hard to say. It succeeded in improving Palestinian, let's say, independence or being close to it, but at the same time, it failed to reach the goalpost.
Nizar, when you talk about that goalpost, which maybe was too optimistic, has that goalpost changed? Do you think that there has been a sort of recalibration of what the goal should be over those years? Is there today?
So, yeah, the main question inside the Palestinian community is, what is the best way to achieve freedom and liberation? Is it a two-state solution or is it a one-state solution? Is it through the use of violence or through the use of non-violence? So, ultimately, how we get there is less relevant to Palestinians. What's more relevant is what is more effective in getting there. So while many Palestinians were very hopeful that the Oslo process was actually going to land us a completely sovereign Palestinian state, even if it's in 22% of what we believe is historically our mandated Palestine, we thought it was better to have 20% of something that's fully sovereign than 100% of not being fully sovereign. And now that the peace process or Oslo Accords have failed, many Palestinians are questioning whether the two-state solution in and of itself is actually a viable solution.
Right. Dan, if I could get personal, when the Oslo Accords were signed, you were part of the party, the camp that rejected the approach. You shifted over the years. Others moved in the other direction, like the current energy minister, Yuval Steinitz. How much did Oslo have to do with your own personal political odyssey?
When Oslo occurred, and I was taken by surprise, like all of us, I remember asking myself and then asking my friends, including Yossi Beilin, what do you think is going to happen in the end? You gave them so much legitimacy of the PLO, and you didn't ask for one thing that is the most important and significant thing. Give up the right of return. The rest is not important. The rest is negotiable, borders, even Jerusalem, which is tough. But the idea that you go back to 48 should have been taken off the table. If there is an agreement. By the way, Yitzhak Rabin, with whom I worked very closely, we were in the same government, National Unity Government. He had defense, I was justice, and we were quite close. He used to say before Oslo, don't negotiate with the PLO, not because of terror, because they represent 48. It's not 67, and we will not be able to solve it. Oslo was an attempt, heroic, but failed, to solve 48, when the visions of the two sides were so wide apart. Rabin, to the last day of his life, objected to Palestinian statehood. And of course, division of Jerusalem, right of return. And Arafat would not have given up on any of these. So I saw, when Oslo was signed, regardless of the ideology and the fact that I'm attached to this land as the other side is attached, I saw the gap so wide, I didn't know how they thought they were going to bridge it in 5 years. So I was not optimistic. Let me say this. The one thing good about Oslo, I thought even then, is what we had earlier was not viable. It needs to be changed, and they understood it. And I say it ever since. We can't continue on the track we are now. It's going to bring bad news to both sides. And we need the leadership to take steps in a better direction, which is two states in whatever form.
I want to ask you about leadership, what you just mentioned, because you mentioned before a failure in leadership. Also, as a longtime member of the Likud, the current ruling party of Benjamin Netanyahu, we've seen the same faces in leadership, both on the Palestinian and Israeli side for years. How much of this is a failure of leadership, and Netanyahu in particular?
Well, to me, it's a leadership question. You know, in the world of today, all over the world, leadership means to read the polls and say what the people want, then you get elected. Think of leaders all over the world. This is not leadership. This is being led by the polls. Leadership, to give an example, is Menachem Begin and Anwar Sadat, both of whom would not have had majority for the move beforehand. They decided it's right, and they convinced all of us to go against your supporters, to do the right thing. This is leadership, and then convince them. In a democracy, you need to do that. I don't see that sort of leadership now on either side.
Well, let me ask you, Nizar, because the Oslo Accords were signed not in Oslo, not here in Israel. They were signed there in Washington on the White House lawn because the U.S. was the indispensable mediator. President Trump wants to present his deal of the century. How are the Palestinians going to respond to the challenge, understanding that there in Washington is ultimately where any kind of deal is going to have to be made?
So the Palestinians are very disappointed with the U-turn that this administration has made vis-a-vis its stewardship of the peace process. It started with a statement of the American president saying that he's happy with whatever the two sides are happy with, which put the Palestinians and the Israelis at equal footing. And then he went into Jerusalem is off the table and refugees are off the table. So as far as the Palestinians are concerned, the Americans have rescinded or have abdicated their role as an honest broker. So now the U.S. has chosen not to be a broker. So I'm not sure that the U.S. chose to stop being the indispensable partner.
Nizar, we know that the Palestinian leadership moved to cut off all ties after that Jerusalem decision you're talking about. Do you think that is the right move? No matter how strongly they feel about President Trump's policies, how can they change it from the outside with no contact?
So the challenge is that the U.S. administration is not interested in brokering a deal that would be sustainable. If Jerusalem and refugees is off the table, it's like a divorce settlement where the divorce lawyer from the one side is saying the house and the kids are off the table. Let's talk about the car. So the U.S. is no longer a mediator here. So the relationship with the U.S. has very little consequence now on the peace process and on Palestinians acquiring or achieving their rights. And of course, it is a painful cost, and it is going to be, of course, costly and is going to have negative consequences on the Palestinians. But these consequences are not worse than waiving their rights.
Dan, we have 40 seconds left. The architects of the Oslo Accords are not with us anymore. But do you believe that you will see, even though you express some pessimism, the end, some kind of agreement between the Israelis and Palestinians?
The real architect is with us, Yossi Beilin. He's the one.
I understand, but I meant the men that signed it.
Yeah, no, he is the one.
I understand.
The spirit.
Do you think you'll see a deal in 10 seconds, I'm afraid?
I certainly hope so. The alternative is one-state situation, whatever the formality. Bad for us, bad for them, and not going to be quiet. So we need to start moving there, and I hope that the leadership will come and do that. I were part of that, and if I were there today, I would move in that direction unilaterally, trying to bring about a change. We cannot continue.
Certainly
it's bad.
no peace.